Hello! First, I want to thank everyone who's been enjoying S.O.A, Satan's Offspring and Associates.
You know, thanks for watching our show.
Yeah, stupid dickheads. Okay, you can't call people that. I just wanted to give you a little update. My children and I are going to England for a few weeks. I'm going to call this the mid-season break. So don't worry, there's episodes yet to come, but I just released episode 7, which to date is my favorite of them. I'm going to give you here, just for a little bonus to tie you over, those who have been enjoying the show, a little bit of a commentary on the episodes so far, just to give you a little behind-the-scenes look at it until we get back and I'm able to can finish off season 1 beginning with episode 8. So let's go through it here, each episode.
I know a born leader when I bang one.
Episode 1 obviously is what started it. I figured I had a fun idea of combining Sons of Anarchy with the characters you might find in, say Trailer Park Boys. Much like Sons of Anarchy decided to point their story in the direction of Hamlet, I decided to point mine in the direction of Macbeth. It's kind of fun to figure out what certain of their fates might be. Originally, the first episode was going to be what you see now in episode 1 and 2. It was going to be too long. It would take me too long to publish these things. It would be a month between or so. And so I decided to cut it in half, make it a little bit shorter, but that way I could release it quicker. Yeah! Little fun fact about episode 1. When Crawford says, "You think you're beyond the law?" The line was originally above the law, which probably makes a little bit more sense. But Beyond the Law is a Charlie Sheen movie about motorcycle gangs, and actually the first movie about a motorcycle gang I really was exposed to. I thought it would be a funny idea to kind of make fun of the previously on segments of shows that gets really obnoxious after a while. So I decided to open up this series with one of those, which of course makes absolutely no sense. So don't think you were missing anything. It was entirely meant to be foolishly silly. I hate change! Because this second episode was just a continuation of the first one, and actually originally part of the first episode, we introduce new characters into it and up the stakes, introducing the kind of things that I really wanted to get out of the show in terms of the gunfights and the bicycle chase sequences and the kind of nonsensical aspect to it. So you can almost look at episode 2 as a continuation of part 1. The two of them really go together as sort of one episode.
I'm already freaking circumcised!
Episode 3 had a slightly different feel than the first two. It introduced a character, Hyman the Waffle, who is going to play a major part in the story as a whole, but he really comes into full force in what I've plotted out for season 2. A good portion of it takes place sitting around the table, so I had to try to come up with ways to make it visually interesting. Compared to the first two, it does kind of stand out in that it's sort of taking the show in somewhat a new direction. It's sort of showing the club some of their enemies and some of the things that are coming up for them. The decision to have Freddy contemplate leaving the gang so early in the show came from a couple sources of my primary inspiration. The one was that a few times during the show, Jax is considering turning his back on Sons of Anarchy, but also early on in Trailer Park Boys, this was something that Julian was considering. I just kind of wanted to give a nod to my sources of inspiration when the audience probably knows that this guy is in the opening credits. He's probably not going anywhere. There's a lot of cool music in this show, and one of the neatest ones is at the end of episode 3, where there's a little ballad sung by Angus, and it was actually based on words written by my son. When he learned the storyline that Freddy was about to leave, for some reason he came up with this little tune, so it was fun to stick that in there.
It's like getting your wiener caught in a table clamp.
Episode 4 is one of my favorites still. I find it one of the funniest, definitely. Teddy's little freak out at the beginning, followed by the baby bouncing around off the walls. Funny enough, both of those things were very last minute kind of additions that I just thought, oh, what if we do this? And trust me, a heck of a lot of trouble to actually stick them into and make special animation for that. Another cool thing about episode 4 is that it introduces a new character that was a lot of fun called Agent Harold Harris. The voice was done by Jeff Earhart. When we were discussing how the voice should be done, he was quite diverse, so we ultimately decided it would be funny to do this federal agent in a British accent and a very authoritative voice that almost sounds like Jason Statham. The storyline kind of pushes forward at a bit of a slower pace, but obviously does set up the sort of focal point of the first half of this season 1, which is Teddy and Angus getting captured in the end by the Kings. The idea of ending episode 4 with the cliffhanger came from one of my favorite things from Sons of Anarchy when I first started watching it, which is that you have to watch it right up to the last second, even when you think it's just a little ending montage that many other shows is just coming to a slow halt. There will be that one thing in the very last moment that changes the dynamic of the entire show.
Since your penis got us into this little crap hole, your penis better get us out.
Episode 5 was a pain in the keister. Since the lads in Joe Thrasher were so cool as to let me use their tune in the opening credits for SOA, as well as at various other points during the show, I thought it'd be kind of cool to have one scene where it took place in a concert, the concert being a Joe Thrasher one. So this meant animating the band and the stage and the audience, and it was a ton of lighting effects. It was the most complex sequence I've had to do on the show to date. Scott, the lead singer for Joe Thrasher, was even cool enough to record himself being a bit of a jackass towards Wally, just because it was something that I thought would be amusing for the lead singer to make fun of one of his loyal fans. But since I had Joe Thrasher playing the concert at the beginning, I didn't want to have an overload of Joe Thrasher. That's why I made the credits a little bit different, and I don't know why, but the idea of having it soap opera style it kind of made me giggle a little bit. The new character we get in episode 5 is Greg the Gimp. Greg the Gimp is the leader of the gang, the Asperger Kings. This was another example of me trying to find completely absurd groups that form gangs. This section of the story also sets up what's to come in several episodes for the remainder of the season. Episode 6 was a bit of a bugger. It actually, even though it's the shortest episode to date, it's the one that took the longest for me to finish, maybe with the exception of the first episode. Part of that had to do with the fact that it's almost entirely fabricated. It wasn't originally meant to be part of the show. What happened was I had episode 5 running a little bit too long. You might notice episode 5 seems to cut off a bit short. That's because the scenes from episode 6, where Freddy is running around trying to find Teddy and Angus, were supposed to be part of episode 5. That show getting too long and getting too complex, I cut them off.
I'm already freaking circumcised.
And then had these few extra scenes with Freddy that I had to expand into an entire episode. I expanded them by adding a few new scenes. The new scenes were the opening scene with the brownies. The brownies were in the story before, just we didn't get to see them getting discovered by the gang at first. So I made that scene, stuck it in. Also, the gun shop scene wasn't originally part of it, and I think that's kind of obvious. It's not a scene that's necessarily pushes the story forward. It's not terribly necessary to the plot. It was just kind of a fun scene, and part of the reason why I wanted that scene is I was looking for an excuse to have some kind of a quote-unquote normal character.
You pre-op weirdo.
Kind of scoff at the idea of a bicycle gang being a legitimate thing in this world, because I realized there's at no point where anybody says, they're a bicycle gang? What up with that, brother? Episode 7 marks the beginning of the all-out gang war that's going to span for a few episodes, and the recourses are going to affect the entire rest of the show. If memory serves, the whole reason why I decided to do the whole now and then and shifting back in time was actually because I was impatient and I was anxious to get to the whole gang war, even though I knew there was a ton of setup that had to happen leading up to it. From my short attention span, I decided to skip ahead to that and then lead into the story, into how we got here. It wasn't really meant as an artistic choice or anything like that. It was just, really out of boredom.
Do you really have to say it that way?
So this pretty much wraps up the first installment of the behind the scenes. I've got a lot of other fun stuff coming up, including getting into how I do some of the voices and cast interviews, the animations, blah blah blah. So keep tuned and